What's going on?
John Priest, how are you?
I'm great.
John Priest from Etude.
Yep, great to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. I have enjoyed these wines for a long time. I've put them on several of my wine lists, but I have to be honest, I don't know much of the backstory behind it.
Great.
I know
that's why I'm here, I hope.
Yeah, I'm very excited to learn. I know that Tony Soter had something to do with it. I know that the wines are very representative of the terroir and they're fantastic, but other than that, I am very eager to learn.
Well, fantastic. I can fill in some of those gaps for you today, I hope. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, let's start with your background. Where did you come from and how do you fit into this picture?
Sure. So I grew up in San Luis Obispo in the central coast of California. Great beaches, mountains right there. Just a fantastic place.
Morro Bay.
Morro Bay, exactly, yeah. Home of frozen closeouts when you're a surfer. The surface temperature of the water right now is about 50 degrees, so a little bit different than here.
Oh, it's brutal. We went in September, and I had never been in the ocean over there. Oh. So we were doing a podcast run, so I think there were 16 podcasts in a couple of days.
3 that day.
Wow. So I told Perry, I said, at one point I'm jumping in the ocean, and he and the guy who ran the cameras for us were a great sport, and I said, well, let's do it, but we're watching the sunrise. So we watched the sunrise and jumped into the water. I don't know what temperature it was, but it was cold.
It was cold.
You jumped right out.
Of course.
Yeah, it's a 5 mil wetsuit minimum, and you're still kind of cold, but you get used to it. Anyway, great. Grew up down there. Went to college up in Washington State, liberal arts school. Didn't even know you could be a winemaker when I was in college. It took a little while to kind of figure that out. Moved back down to California. And the wine business, or the wine industry in San Luis Obispo was starting to emerge. My father was an architect. He had designed some wineries. I'm like, I don't know, maybe a winery angle is the thing to go. Got a job in a tasting room. I knew nothing. I think I remember, and I'm going to have this on camera now, that I told somebody my first day that Sauvignon Blanc was Cabernet with the skins removed. I've come a long way since then, so I didn't really know much. Fast forward, I had an opportunity to go work for a distributor in Santa Barbara. They moved me down there. I took a moonlighting job at the Wine Cask, which is a great wine shop with a little 10-table restaurant attached to it. I mean, it was who's who of wine. I mean, Angelo Gaia would come in, everybody from Europe would come through there. And for me, it was the chance to taste all these amazing wines and really get to learn, like finishing school for wine appreciation. And fell in love with wine, really absolutely did. Had a bottle of Mayo Camazet 1985 Au Bordeaux Burgundy, and I thought, that's it. I love Pinot Noir. I'm gonna make Pinot Noir. I was so naive at the time, I didn't know better. And some of my buddies were going off to work crush, and that sounded so romantic to me. Take off a fall and go work your ass off and just work hard and not sleep and be with the grapes. And I had to do that. So I called my buddy Jim Clendon at Aubon Clement. He hired me on the spot, but wasn't going to pay me. So that was a little like, great experience. What a great winery to work with, an iconic winemaker, but I think I got to pay rent. So I found a job at Wild Horse Winery back in 1989, so I'm dating myself here, as a cellar rat for $6 an hour. And it was a great place to be because I had the opportunity to learn on the job and great mentorship, and we were just kicking it out of the park. I mean, it was really great. 10 years later, became the winemaker. Not the typical path. I didn't go to school to become a winemaker, but I learned on the job.
Yeah, not everybody does.
Valuable.
Yeah. We were speaking with somebody the other day, and I can't remember who it was, that said they just kind of worked their way from cellar rat to winemaker, and I think that's a good a story we hear quite a bit sometimes, including Italian winemakers and French winemakers too. They
have a good mentor, I have a good opportunity, and I had to teach myself a lot too. And fortunately, worked for a place where we could make mistakes and really not completely fail. We would find successes from our mistakes, and so I think it made me a pretty good winemaker ultimately. Yeah.
So when did you transition into the role that you're in now?
Yeah, so I left Wild Horse in 2002 to work on this little project down in Santa Barbara County with Pinot Noir, focusing on Santa Rita Hills, Santa Maria Valley, kind of a little garage thing. And I got a call one day from Tony Soter about coming up to Etude. He had sold the winery a couple of years earlier and was transitioning out. And part of that transition was to kind of set the place up. So said, yeah, I could be there in 6 hours. I mean, it was just, there was no question. I was going to go up to it too. That was a dream come true, really. A winery that I admired, a winemaker that I held in high esteem. There was just no question. So I moved up to Napa in 2005 and took the role that I have now, which is now I'm the senior winemaker and general manager. I joke sometimes on a good day I'm the winemaker.
Well, and you do have a nice, like, broad portfolio, right? You have, at least in Florida, you have 3 different Pinots and some super high-end, really nice wines, and then a great Cab, Pinot Gris, Rosé.
Yeah.
What am I missing? Chardonnay.
Chardonnay as well, yeah. And then at the winery, you know, we have a great sort of mailing list and direct-to-consumer business. Come to the tasting room. You can taste our Blanc de Noir sparkling wine off of our Grace Benoit Ranch, our little grower-producer champagnes sort of tribute. Pinot Blanc as well. I make 10 different Pinot Noirs, anywhere from single vineyard wines off of our estate ranch to Fiddlesticks Vineyard in Santa Rita Hills, Yamela Vineyard up in Oregon. For a little while I was making wine from Central Otago in New Zealand.
Oh wow.
You know, kind of this really great study of Pinot Noir. And then 4 Cabernets. So yeah, we're pretty busy. Yeah.
As far as so many Pinots to make, like, how do you, like, manage to work with each Pinot? Like, I mean, are there different processes that you're using with all these different Pinots, or do you just let the vineyard speak for itself?
It's the easiest thing. I really do the latter. You know, really want to kind of bring all that expression. That's what Pinot Noir, that's what drew me to Pinot Noir and Burgundy. That whole idea, that sensibility that you can have this one parcel, this one vineyard that has this attribute and quality, and across this ancient goat path, you would have another vineyard that's maybe a little better, maybe a little worse, but different, you know, and nothing really explains, it has that transparency of a variety like Pinot Noir to kind of express that place. So if you take that approach, that we're just growing grapes to really express the best quality we can from that vineyard, and then I just sort of guide it along to really bring out those attributes. It really is, it's kind of a hallmark of our approach to winemaking, and an easier way to do it. There's no formula, so to speak.
Mother Nature's a formula.
Mother Nature's the formula. Boy, she can humble us, for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think what I've always known you guys for is definitely your Pinot Noir. That's what I've always thought of when I thought of it too. I didn't realize there were 10 different wines in your portfolio, but that's impressive. I mean, and especially with a grape that's so difficult to manage on its own. When did the other grapes start coming into play? I know in recent years, probably, maybe I saw the Cab 5 or 6 years ago. I don't remember at this point, but I did have it on a reserve list at one of the restaurants, and that was the first time I remember seeing it. But when I saw it, I remember being shocked and thinking, I thought this was a Pinot house.
Yeah. So you mentioned Tony Soter earlier, the founder of Etude. You know, think back of his history. He really made his name with Cabernet in Napa Valley before Pinot Noir, you know, making some of the really iconic wines, you know, the 1985 Spotswood, probably one of the best wines ever made in Napa Valley, and Arajo and Dalle Valle, and, you know, the list goes on of wines that he was involved with. So he really got a great lay of the land and relationships with these growers. So even though he started Etude based on Pinot Noir in 1982, he just couldn't resist the temptation to bring in Cabernet. So in 1985 was the first Napa Cab. So we've been doing it for a while.
Wow.
Albeit a small amount.
Sure.
You know, we're working with, you know, incredibly esteemed growers. And some growers go back to the very first wine, Vine Hill Ranch, which is arguably Grand Cru. You know, I mean, it's where the arrow hits the bullseye in Oakville, if not Napa Valley. You know, the first grapes that they sold were to Tony. So it's great to have these long-standing relationships with some of the, you know, the real hallmark vineyards in Napa.
I was thinking about, like, we were talking with Bo Barrett about his 2020s. He didn't even make.
Yeah.
Is that going to be the case for your Cab?
No, we made it 2020. In fact, we're bottling it in a couple of weeks. But yeah, I mean, because of 2020, oh, what a great vintage, boy. COVID, heat waves, fires. No, not just one fire, but 2 big fires. Yeah, that was a real challenge. But I think you had to sort of really kind of make a line geographically where you were located, and up in Calistoga, they would have been in the midst of all of that trouble. So it makes complete sense that you would not make a wine. Vineyards that we would have harvested up in St. Helena in that area, we didn't harvest just because of the damage to smoke. So further south in the valley, I think we were protected. In Meteor Vineyard in Coombsville and Pine Hill Ranch in Oakville, more solely in Rutherford, we're all good. However, we tested and tasted, rigorously, over the last, before we picked the grapes and over the last couple of years to ensure that what we're putting in the bottle is going to be sound. Yeah.
You almost have to. I mean, with the way the fires are going almost yearly at this point, and it's a new kind of spin on winemaking, right? Like you said, Mother Nature can be quite wild, and now, throwing a curveball at you. I didn't realize until we talked to Bo actually just how wild the fires affected. He said that it's so heartbreaking and it plays with you because you could be out in the vineyards, you see it and the grapes look wonderful, you taste it and they taste wonderful, but it's not until the fermentation where it actually starts to come out and ruin your day.
Yeah, absolutely, and you don't know, and even then, that smoke absorbs into the plant. It becomes part of the chemistry of the grape. It isn't the particulate; it's in the grape.
Right.
And you could make a very pristine, very very fine wine, and then those compounds hydrolyze. Not to get too scientific about it, and then they rear their ugly head. So you feel like you could be fine, put it in the bottle. A year later, boom. Yeah. So you had to kind of think forward, like, is this going to change?
You can't ruin your brand by chasing something either, right?
I know some wineries that are bottling and with full knowledge, like even on the label, this wine is smoke tainted. You should try it. That's a great bold move, but at least they're warning the consumer before they pick it off the shelf.
As long as they're warning, but also you have to think a lot of the smaller guys who really are counting on that harvest. I mean, you lose a lot of money when you drop and you don't bottle.
100%.
Some of these people have to do what they have to do to survive, and like he said, a lot of them aren't even distilling it. Right? He said that it wasn't worth it cost-wise.
Just the cost to put into harvesting it, and it just wasn't worth it.
Yeah.
So we're doing our part, I think, to really knowing that climate change is a factor, and climate change is affecting us in these ways. We're wanting to make some great strides. We have a 100% renewable goal within the next 2 years. I mean, tractors, everything, and we have a net zero goal by 2030. So we're putting it out there. We're making sure that our farming is sequestering greenhouse gases. Rather than doing a lot of tilling, keep those. Keep it in the ground, where the plant needs it, where it's actually going to help the plant, help the soil have this life, rather than releasing it into the atmosphere. So look, small parts.
Yeah.
But we're part of the Sonoma Climate Adaptation Certification. Just last year, just by collecting and the data and counting everything up, we sequester enough CO2. I think it's like taking 4 million cars off of the road for a year.
That's just for your winery.
No, that's for Sonoma County.
Sonoma County. That's
the people who are in this organization.
Yeah.
So, look, big effects can happen if we just take these small steps. So we want to be on the forefront of that, and maybe a good example of it as well.
So when you say you have a 2-year plan, what does that look like? Like broken down for the people listening? What are some of the steps you're taking?
We're already solar. We already measure. I mean, you can't improve what you don't measure. So we're measuring our water consumption and our energy use and our waste. How much goes to the landfill, because we want to reduce those methane gases. So we're trying to go compostable and recyclable that way. But we have also brought in an organization that can really, they're smarter than we are. They can kind of really think about, okay, if you put a little bit more solar array over here, or if you change these variable frequency drive pumps, if you change your mechanics of things and your lighting and this and that, boom, here's your bottom line. Here's what you're going to save. And it's worth it. It really pencils out. Yeah.
It's good that you have neighbors too, right? I'm sure other people are getting involved in this idea. I mean, we talked to Jason about regenerative farming.
Yeah.
And
nobody can talk about it better than.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. But they were kind of like first, and then I just talked to Ryan Patty the other day, and Arsonist Winery in Matchbook. Their plan is regenerative farming 100% by 2024.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of acreage.
It is a lot of acreage, and the Grace Benoit Ranch, I mean, just our estate ranch itself, it's 1,500 acres of property, 500 acres planted. Not all that is a toot, but that's a sizable property.
Yeah.
It can be really a sort of a benchmark and maybe something as an example people can look at.
It's a large undertaking, and it's great. As we have kind of started this podcast and moved forward, we've talked to a lot of winemakers, and something that came up early on, actually what woke us up to it was Chris Benzinger, and it wind that guy up and let him go. And
but been a real champion.
Absolutely.
For a long time.
And that's what
his entire life.
It was beautiful. That's exactly what we were looking for. And we got off that podcast, and I certainly can speak for myself saying, wow, I was blown away by this. There was a lot that I didn't know, and I looked into it, and we looked into it, and then we start talking to more and more winemakers who are starting to take this approach and really try to farm like the world depends on, right?
Absolutely. We want to be doing this for a long time. We see the changes, whether it's Chablis or Germany or fires in Calistoga. I mean, you see the effect of what's going on, and we have to be an agent of change of that.
Absolutely.
And water is obviously a very precious resource in California. And fortunately, we had some nice rainfall this year, although California is still in a drought.
Yeah.
We didn't get the snowpack. So we have to be careful about how we use it, be very mindful of it. So we're measuring that along the way as well.
I want to talk about, off the subject, your Pinot Noir, your rosette.
Okay.
It's a beautiful rosette. Beautiful color, everything about it. I mean, it's just a beautiful package.
Thank you.
What's the varietal?
Pinot Noir.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. Pinot Noir, for sure. Look, I'm a Pinot guy, so I'm not a very dogmatic guy until it comes to Pinot Noir.
Yeah.
You don't blend other things into it. And that wine that you're referring to is from a vineyard, it's a beautiful, beautiful vineyard down in the Santa Maria Valley in Santa Barbara County. So obviously that's where I come from. I have an affinity to the area, but I also have some knowledge of it. North Canyon Vineyard is this beautiful canyon that's framed by these sandstone bluffs. The Cuyama River forms the canyon. Lets out right at Bienvenido Vineyards, right in the Santa Maria Valley, passes Au Bon Clement and Coupe. And along these bluffs are just spectacular Pinot Noir. So,
it's a beautiful wine. And it's I get rose petals from that wine. I don't know if that's what you get, and then some nice bright strawberry fruit. But for me here in Florida, this is let's take that with the paddle boards. Let's go to the beach. It's just the nicest wine, and I really enjoyed it. I think that's a big that people need to get their hands on when they swing by the store.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the vibrancy. I love acidity in wine, and those cool climate grapes. I mean, that's it makes the wine kind of succulent and juicy, and you want another sip. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's plenty of food here in Florida. That wine would work with too. So.
It's hot and it's refreshing.
And what's always
porch
here.
pounder.
Yeah, exactly.
It's screw cap. It makes it easy.
Which, even talking about porch pounders, when did you take this transition into white wines? Because that's something that is very interesting. I give you the cab. I saw the cab several years ago, but that's got to be a big left turn for you.
Yeah, I actually, when I talk about making Pinot Noir and Cabernet, I say, well, it allows me to use both sides of my brain. Very, very different approaches to them, for sure. But, the white wine from Etude was the Pinot Gris. Kind of came around in the mid-90s.
Okay.
It was all from Lee Hudson's vineyard in Carneros, and that was it. That was the white wine. A little bit of Pinot Blanc kind of snuck in a little bit. And then when we planted the Grace Benoit Ranch in 2000, of course we had to include Pinot Gris. We got a couple clones from Alsace. We have some wonderful heritage clones of Pinot Blanc. And then, of course, Chardonnay, which was never part of the portfolio. We planted an array of different clones and selections out there too, and really trying to take advantage of that volcanic soil and that cool climate, and make a wine that's just solely ours. It's not a California typical Chardonnay by any means, but speaks to who we are.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's funny that the Pinot Gris was the staple, because I would think with so many Pinots, Chardonnay would be the staple behind it, right? Where great Pinot grows, great Chard grows.
Yeah, you would think though. I just don't think Tony was interested in kind of getting into that fray. I think he wanted to find something a little bit different, and Pinot Gris was an unusual sort of grape to go after. Even now, there isn't much planted. If you want to produce one, you need to grow the grapes yourself. For the most part.
There's not a ton in California for sure.
And you got it in the right oscillation bottle, nice tall thin bottle. I like that. That's better than most bottles that I've seen.
Yeah, it's a good looking
it makes me want to buy it just because I'm like, oh yeah, this reminds me of a sauce. Yeah.
It is definitely a tip of our hat to all sauce. I mean, the sourcing of the vines and just our approach, There's no oak, I've actually fermented in stainless steel barrels, so you get a barrel fermentation. Helps with the mid palate, but not the oak or the oxygenation. No mallow, again, keeping that nice acidity up there, and the aromas nice and pure. It's not a very aromatic variety generally, so if you can capture everything you can, I love the aroma of our wine. I mean, it's kind of my go-to, especially as the weather gets warmer.
Yeah,
early bottle I grab home.
Early harvest wine. I mean, is that like what you're going to first?
We're harvesting that in August.
Keep it nice and cool and
exactly. Pick it at night, nice and cool. Very gentle pressing. It's a tannic grape, believe it or not. So you have to be really gentle with how you press it and make the wine. I love it.
I didn't know that either.
No.
Learned something.
You learned something on this podcast.
That's why a lot of people are doing some skin ton packed with Pinot Gris, and I think that's really groovy. I think that's great, but it's risky too because the tannin, that phenolics, can make the wine tough and actually maybe even alter the color a little bit.
Yeah, which is where orange wine comes from.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
It's orange wine
for sure.
And then you get this weird kind of, like you said, funky, groovy expression of what's going on, and there's been. It's a risk. There's been some that have been not the best for me, but then there's been some that have been phenomenal.
They're interesting, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're wine geeky. Not everybody's going to head towards that stuff.
Yeah, and I am too. And I kind of gravitate towards stuff like that too. But I also just love that pure, pristine, sort of classic approach to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It seems like everything that you guys are doing, or at least from the outside looking in, it looks like you guys are making very true to form wines. You're not making big, overly extracted California, in-your-face Pinot Noir. You're making very old-world, classic of the terroir, expressive of the terroir, I should say. Wines, which is a very nice change of pace, as it seems like a lot of California is going to those bigger style.
They're chasing the customer for some style,
right,
and not letting the varietal do what it naturally does.
Well, I appreciate you saying that because that is 100% the approach. Some purity, some honesty, integrity to the grape, to the place. Not saying those wines don't have integrity, but our approach is just like showcasing that. I have an old school palate. I drink more old style European wine, or Edna Rosso, or Cru Beaujolais than I do California wine. So I lean kind of toward that more classic style anyway. And I love the wine. The elements that I love about those wines are the vibrancy, or that sense of place, maybe a sense of minerality, things that you can obscure pretty quickly if you get the grapes too ripe, if you slather it with winemaking or oak. You can really get in the way of a lot of nuance, which to me is the charm of that place and that wine.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with all of that, and I love that you said it. So even the cab, it's not that big California style. It's very reserved, and you get the feeling that it's got a ton of aging ability. I mean,
it's like a historical Napa cab, right? Or it's that style that you can lay down and really have it for your anniversary 10, 15, 20 years from
Absolutely.
Now. Yeah.
They do age well. I mean, the wines, the Etude wines that Tony made from the mid-90s are sublime right now.
Yeah.
They really age well.
Did you bring one?
I did.
I haven't looked at the ABV on them, but I would imagine it's not over the top. The acid is nice.
Yeah, I guess that's a funny thing because they're ripe Napa cabs. They're just not too ripe, I guess.
Sure.
The alcohol's up there in that kind of Napa cab range, you might say.
Okay.
Maybe the lower end of some.
Sure.
But I really love, I love acidity. I love the vibrancy. This wine should be vibrant.
Well, it shows.
They should have aromatics, and the longer the grape hangs in the vine, one of the first things you lose is the aroma compounds. So it should have perfume. It should intrigue you and pull you into the glass. And then just the texture of tannin. We're working with these amazing, really Grand Cru vineyards from the benchland, which are naturally going to give you this sort of texture of tannin that I think really helps us make that style of wine.
So is it all about when you're harvesting, as you're trying to capture the acidity in those big cabs? You're not letting it push too hot. You're capturing it a little earlier.
Tony and I used to joke that the grapes are getting better until they're getting worse. And, you want to definitely pick them while they're getting better or at their peak, before they start shriveling or, really kind of losing acidity and losing the life of the wine itself, of the grape itself. So I tend to find myself picking earlier and earlier as I go on. Our Chardonnay can be 12.5% sometimes, or 13.1. I mean, really pretty low.
Yeah.
And again, the acidity is there. We have plenty of sunshine in California. The grapes are going to have a sense of ripeness no matter what. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I don't know what it is. I would imagine it was somewhere between 14.5, 15, but you're seeing
14.5.
Okay. Yeah. Which is not crazy for California wine.
No, it's kind of right in the range, I think.
Yeah, especially these days, you're seeing them push 16+%, and that's not unusual. I think it's a nice balance, and the acidity shows really well on it.
And that's no longer from sugar accumulation. That's from desiccation. So, you're concentrating that sugar by that grape shriveling. So, yeah.
Somebody said to us one time, if you knew the RS, and if you had to put RS on the back of your bottle, a lot of people would shop wine differently. Have you ever heard that before?
People talk dry but drink sweet. Mine are all dry. Yeah, I like the comfort of sleeping at night. But
there you go.
Dry,
Well, we have a wine dinner coming up in an hour or so, and a lot of people are going to get to taste all these wines with you.
With food and with friends.
With food and friends,
the way they're supposed to be consumed,
We enjoy that, and I also want to thank Ian, Wendy, and Riley for letting us use the outpost here in their little private room. So we appreciate your time.
Yeah.
And,
it's thrilling to be here. My first time back to Florida since 2020. So.
Oh wow.
You're not the only one.
Back. Yeah.
Is this the first trip overall, or just the first trip?
No, I've been shot out the starting gates. This is my third trip. I got a couple more.
Okay.
Yeah. But great to be back out and seeing people again and being able to pop a bottle of wine.
Yeah, great. We're
That's
looking
awesome.
forward to it.
Well, thank you so much.
John
It's a pleasure
Priest.
to meet you.
Dude.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks. Cheers.
Cheers.